About an hour, half hour to an hour.
Cool.
What's going on, everyone? We are now live with my man, Luke Shrader. Luke, dude, I apologize. You're like, Ben, you spelled my name wrong in the description, which is really funny because, like, Luke and I have known each other for over 10 years now.
Yeah.
It's insane.
Yeah, I was trying to find that exact tournament that we fished together. It was 2010, 2009, maybe?
Yeah, it was like 2010.
Yeah.
So one of the crazy things, man, and not a lot of people know this, but, like, you were the second bass boat I ever rode in. Like, I was playing it cool. I don't know why I entered that tournament, but, like, the second bass boat I ever rode in, and day one was with Brandon Coulter. So, I mean, it couldn't have gotten any better.
I think we were both definitely clueless in retrospect, you know.
Yeah, dude. So tell everyone a little bit about who you are, where you're from, a little bit about what you're doing this year, because you have a cool story.
Yeah, cool. So I'm from New Jersey, Philadelphia area. I've lived here most of my life. I've always been really passionate about bass fishing. I feel like ever since I was 2 or 3 years old, I kind of knew that it's what I wanted to do with at least a portion of my life. I've been pursuing it ever since. It's been a super difficult road. I always thought it would be a lot easier than it is. I think we all do when we jump head over heels into it. And I guess a perfect indicator would be like 2010 when we were fishing together, and I was fishing the Toyota series and I guess the Strength series at the time in the opens, and I was under-equipped. I had a 19-foot boat, definitely did not have the money or the tools to sort of sustain it or support it. And it took me a while to get to where I am now, and had to sort of take a few steps back a couple times.
How old are you now, man?
I am going to be 32 next week.
So, man, I can't even imagine being 22 years old trying to do what you were doing. Because you fished open the following week, didn't you, on Champlain?
I did, yeah. I never had the opportunity to fish all three because I ran out of money like before I got to the third one every year. I'd fish the first or the second. And, you know, if I had made it, I don't think I really would have been able to sustain it, or I wasn't good enough anyway. So I think now that I'm thankful that I've traveled around the country and had my teeth kicked in a bunch of places, and I'm a lot better for it. So.
Yeah, dude. And what you're doing this year, kind of talk about the MPFL. For everyone that doesn't know, Luke is going to be fishing the MPFL, which is the new pro circuit, and kind of traveling everywhere, man.
Yeah. So I'm making settlement on my house in New Jersey at the end of the month. So I will no longer be a New Jersey resident. I'm not sure where I'm going to end up, probably somewhere down south, but I'm going to just jump in head first and travel around the country for the next 6 to 8 months, fishing the MPFL, which is the new pro circuit, as well as the Central Opens, and then whatever sort of BFLs and other grassroots levels tournaments I can fish.
That's so cool, man.
Not so much to make money fishing those smaller events, but really just to learn and to get the experience, because it's invaluable. And without actually fishing, I feel like the tournament and going through the motions, you just don't get as much out of it. So.
And the other big thing, man, like you just went to Eufaula, and then you went. Where'd you go after Eufaula? Because you're basically living out of your truck right now, right?
Yeah, so I'm back home now, but I just spent the past 4 weeks traveling. Started the trip off at Eufaula. Then I went up to Kiwi for a few days in upstate South Carolina.
Okay.
Went to
How was that?
That was totally unique. I've never been to any place quite like it. I've caught spotted bass before, but not like that. There's a lot of factors on that lake. It's really deep, but there's also like a nuclear power plant with a warm water discharge. So there's like a lot of calculated decisions you have to make as far as you want to fish the warmer water, do you want to fish the deeper, cooler water, largemouth, spotted bass, and just try and figure that out in 2 to 3 days is just really difficult. And that's where like the local guys have a huge advantage. So. But from there, I went to Guntersville for a few days. I went to Logan Martin for a day. I went back to Eufaula, and then I just spent another 6 days on the Harris Chain. So
that's so cool, man.
Like then most of it sleeping in my truck. I got a few good friends along the way, so big thanks to all of them. Everyone let me crash and take a shower at their place.
Oh yeah, dude! You had a video of you where you were taking a shower like outside of your truck.
Yeah, that was like the first time I used that. I bought one of those $10 camping showers at the Walmart, filled it up at the sink with sink water at the ramp.
That's so cool. You know, I mean, it's not glamorous, man, but like, and I'm sure you don't feel it right now, but from the outside looking in, it's cool to see like what you're going through, like what you're basically doing to get to where you want to be.
Yeah, I think you have to do it. And I think that there's a lot of people who have sort of proven that that's the right path to take, whether it be like Brandon Palaniuk with the whole Tundra Suites, you know, which is sort of where I dubbed my Suburban Suites name from.
That's so cool, man.
But there's a lot of guys who have done it. So
So I'm going to set up like a little intro, but the way I typically break this down is kind of walk through. We're going to be talking shallow river fishing. I know you're a tidal water guy, so we can touch on that a little bit through there. But talk about like how you start to break down a shallow river, like what you're looking for, how you follow these fish through progressions. Then we'll go into sort of like the when and talk about like when you kind of move, where, right? Like when is it more current driven and when is it more, cover driven and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
Then talk about some of your favorite baits, and then we'll sort of wrap it up. So it's basically 3 or 4 different little segments. I'll kind of moderate and just ask you questions, and we'll run through this thing. But it's basically just talking fishing.
Awesome.
We'll get some questions coming through, and that's how we'll break it down. So I'm going to lay it out with a little intro because it's going to be streamed on my podcast as well, which will be up on probably Tuesday next week. So lay down a little intro, and then we'll get into this thing.
Cool.
What is going on, everyone? This is Ben Nowak, and this is Benjamin Nowak Podcast. That's my name. So the podcast is name. Pretty simple. But tonight we have a really cool guest, Mr. Luke Shrader, who's fishing the MPFL. He's a hammer on the Chesapeake Bay, Potomac River, all of those Eastern-style shallow water bodies of water. And the dude's just an awesome fisherman. Cool story about Luke. Luke and I actually fished together about 10 years ago. He was the second bass boat I ever rode in out on Lake Champlain, and dude handled it really well in like 5.5-foot waves. So really cool trip out there with that dude. He didn't kill us, and so we're both here to have this live with you guys. But we're going to be breaking this thing down, shallow water bass, and talk a little bit about tidal water fishing and just how Luke approaches these bodies of water. So hopefully you guys can catch more fish. What's going on, Luke?
Hey, Ben, how are you?
Good, my man. So the way we're going to break this down is sort of talk about when you're going to be fishing rivers, like how you're going to move throughout the river system.
Yeah.
Basically, whether it's current driven or you're looking for certain pieces of cover or structure. Then talk about the baits and kind of your progression on how you follow these fish throughout shallow water situations. And what's really cool about this too, dude, and I'll kind of let you talk on this a little bit, but this kind of is nationwide. Like it doesn't matter where you live. We're not talking Great Lakes. We're not talking like giant TVA style bodies of water. Like everyone has shallow river situations. So I'm excited about that, and kind of lead us into this thing. How has this helped you kind of nationwide? Like I know you just went to Eufaula and Gunnersville, but how is this helping you across the country?
Yeah. Wow, there's so many scenarios, but I'll just bring up a recent one. I was just in Florida 2 days ago. I just flew back. I was on the Harris Chain, and there's obviously a series of lakes there, but there's a bunch of canals and whatnot that connect them. And some of those canals will have the water flowing through them. And you'll notice in certain situations there, that's probably one of the more consistent bites or predictable spots where you could target a bass. And there were certain community hole areas that I didn't get to fish because they just had so much pressure, but they had so much pressure because there were always fish there. And that was just, you could look at the guys fishing from the bank or the boat or two that was power pulled down or the guys on the pontoon boat. And, everyone knew it. And that was probably the spot that you could go to every day and catch a few bass.
That's so cool.
Fishing pressure anyway, so.
And it's funny because even on the Great Lakes, like river fishing plays, like when you can't get on the big water, like you can go fish the rivers. And if you're a good river angler, so like if you know how to read current or you know how to read, eddies and everything else that goes into river fishing, you can go catch them. It doesn't matter if you're up north, down south. And so I'm really excited for this one, dude, because there's been so many requests for people coming in and asking for this. So let's start by talking about like progressions. Obviously, it's going to depend on where you live, but talk to me a little bit about how you make decisions on when to move, even whether it's tidal water driven where you're following the tide or moving with the tide, or it's current, right? Like talk to me a little bit about like pre-spawn where you're looking, spawn where you start to look, and so on and so forth.
A lot of these things are going to tie back to current, of course. And I'm going to look at that probably before I look at anything. And I'm going to think about what time of year it is and whether or not that current is desirable, which it probably is 75% of the time, or if it's undesirable. And those scenarios would be like wintertime would probably be number one that I would think of when the fish are actually trying to get out of the current. And in those scenarios, you're going to look for maybe those backwater areas, those deeper wintering holes, those spots where the fish don't have to fight the current all the time. So that from the get-go is going to allow you to sort of like cut things in half. Now, in the summer, other times of the year, those fish are there's always going to be some resident fish in those non-current oriented places, but I think your more predictable spots, are going to be around the current or around the current breaks. The
So, like,
spawn would be the other time where you're going to look to get actually out of the current.
like overall, would you say you're more like you follow the current and you like look for the current driven places? I mean,
I think so, because I think it just positions the fish better, or you're looking for like that break line where obviously there's a point or there's a wall where there's a very distinct current break.
so like talk to me a little bit about tidal river or tidal water fishing. I've never done it, right? But like how big of a factor does that play both with like sort of this current theme, but also do you follow the current or follow the tide, or do you sort of wait it out? Like,
Right. It's about either you can't totally follow the tide, but you can of course stretch it out. So a place like the Potomac River or the Delaware River over a 30 to let's say about a 30-mile stretch, your lag is going to be about maybe an hour to an hour and a half. So low tide at the bottom of the river is going to be earlier in the day than it is at the top of the river. So if you were trying to fish around that low tide, you could start downriver and then have like a milk run progressively up the river, and you'd be fishing closer to that low tide. Now that's going to involve a lot more running. You're going to lose some more time, but you might be fishing a more desirable tide. The alternative to that is to try and find fish in different areas that suit that particular tide. And then you can sort of link it together. So, throughout a typical tide swing is 6 hours for anyone who doesn't know that, up to down. And a typical tournament is what, 8? So
yeah,
you're going to experience pretty much a full tide swing throughout the tournament. So you're probably going to need fish at low tide, and you're probably going to need fish at high tide. So whether or not you can connect those two dots, is up to the angler, or if they want to get a bunch of dots in between, you can sort of take that approach as well.
that's pretty sweet, dude. So when you're looking for these spots, right? Current like river system spots, what are you looking for? Like typically, does it fish like a lake? Like you're looking for points and you're looking for current breaks, or you're looking for because like where I'm fishing is small river systems. I don't really get out on the big river stuff, but like how do you start to break like a river down?
You could break it down pattern specific and sort of run it like that. I would think, from my experience, it's easier to follow a pattern on a lake than it is on a river. The rivers tend to be a little more spot specific.
Gotcha.
You also have more variables, I feel like, on the river systems as far as water clarity and whatnot. So you might have to, based upon, say, rain that blew out all the backs of the creeks and made them muddy, you might not even be able to look at any of that stuff or fish any of that stuff. You're going to have to fish your main river where your water clarity is cleaner. So there might be certain external factors that kind of break it down for you.
How much of that like is just knowledge experience from being on certain rivers, and how much of it is like research? Like when you're traveling the country, right? Like you have 3 days.
Yeah.
You can't just go out there totally blind, but
I think some of it is just experience, and also just understanding how similar bodies of water react and knowing approximately like how much time it's going to take for that water to clean up, or
gotcha.
going to stay cleaner in the creek, or if it's going to stay cleaner on the main river.
Yeah. So, talk to me about like the Delaware and like Potomac River situations, particularly. Like you have all these different styles of cover you could be fishing, whether it's wood, whether it's rock, whether it's grass. I mean, so much grass, man. But like, how do you determine when you're going to be hitting what? Does that change throughout the year? Like I know up here in the fall, I'm starting to key in on wood, but like, does it play the same for you?
It is. It's definitely seasonal. It's almost always going to start on hardcover for the first few weeks of the year. And then typically for us, it's like late March, early mid-April is when the grass just starts to grow. And it seems like the grass is usually has the bigger fish and is probably king, but it's less consistent in my opinion. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. And there's a lot of tournaments where you could win it off hardcover or you could win it off grass. I think the grass is a little bit easier to, say, stumble upon, or you could find a winning group of fish in one area.
Yeah.
Whereas the hardcover is more like accumulated knowledge. You have 20 different spots over the river that you need to run. And sometimes you got to flip your jig under that dock 10 or 20 times. But if you know that there's always a fish under there, then you have the confidence to do that.
Yeah.
So I would say that it starts on hardcover, then grass is going to become better. And then summertime, we see the hardcover play a lot again. Fall.
Why is that? Like it's sort of the same around here. So like I ask these questions, but like it's sort of interesting to hear your take on this and see how it plays around here too. Because like, why do you think that wood gets good in summertime again?
I think the grass bite sort of like dilutes itself. Like you get so much grass, and the fish can sort of just spread out within that grass, and they get tougher to catch.
Yeah, they're like
Potomac just
it's like a needle in a haystack, dude.
yeah, like the Potomac, for example, gets so choked out it's hard to fish. The
Yeah.
Chesapeake gets really clean, and the fish get really pressure to the point where they see you coming and they're not going to eat. You know, so you'd rather fish that muddier hard cover to maybe trigger a bite.
And so, like, I know up here at least, when I get on these bodies of water that start to get choked out with grass, and there's just like grass everywhere.
Yeah.
Like one of the biggest things for me and that I like to do is look for differences in the grass, right? Like this is basic grass fishing 101. Like look for either different styles of grass, irregularities, or like you said, man, like one of the biggest things in the middle of summer is looking for areas where hard cover meets grass.
Yeah.
Because if you can find that, like you start to get this ecosystem growing, which is one of the benefits of grass, but one of the hardest parts is it's not everywhere. Like even though there's grass all over, like you can't just typically run down a big river system and fish everything.
Right. And I think it maybe took me a while to figure this out, but it's not always grass, it's the absence of grass. And like when you find that spot where there isn't grass, or there's that sand patch, or there's that rock that's in the middle of the grass, like that's where it's always a fish. You know, when you can throw your bait and watch it fall right in that hole, you know, that's when you're gonna get bit for sure.
So let's start to talk about some of the gear that you like to use. Like how do you start to break down a river system? Like if you're going to a river, what are like 5 rods and reels that you could have tied on or ready to go, like lined up?
Yeah. I'm going to say spinnerbait. I'm going to say a chatterbait, a shaky head, a lighter Texas rig, and then maybe something heavier to flip with, just sort of depending upon the season, and a frog if it's summertime.
Yeah. So talk a little bit about that shaky head, right? Because a lot of people think heavy cover, heavy line, like if you're fishing shallow situations. So what is it for that?
I normally throw 10-pound line, sometimes 12. I prefer a spinning rod. And I think that if you have everything set correctly, you can do some pretty incredible things with 10 and 12-pound line with a big fish in a nasty spot.
And the other big thing too,
but you can get them out, and you know what? I'd rather lose a fish than have never tried. You know what I mean? So
yeah, like
sometimes it's the only way to get them to bite. So you got to take your chances with it.
For sure. And one of the other things there too is you have the ability with, especially with a Texas rig, right? Like, or excuse me, a shaky head to Texas rig that, and then like put it in places that other guys aren't fishing that light of a bait. And it's a cool approach that I think a lot of guys overlook, because I know myself, like I'll get locked in and I will throw a jig all day, like just not stop, heavy cover, heavy line. But
it's a big thing here, and I don't know if it's just the fishing pressure, but like the entire, you know, Northeast region, like Mid-Atlantic, is just sometimes you can't flip a jig because they just because they've already seen 20 of them. So
yeah, dude. So let's say, for example, like someone's going out to a river for the first time, like someone who has no river knowledge, like what is going to be one of the best areas that you start to look for? Like if you're going to a river you've never been to, let's say early spring, like we're starting to hit that pattern, like up here in the north, fish are starting to get pre-spawn. What are you going to start to look for?
You're going to look for grass that's starting to emerge in a spawning area or a creek or somewhere that the fish can move into. I would say once the water hits mid-40s here, in the lower 50s, they're starting to push into these areas. They're not as active at first. Like it'll be high 40s and the fish won't eat that well, but I think they're already in that 4 feet of water, 6 feet of water sort of staging, ready to go into their spawning areas. And you're going to look for those first little bits of green grass that start to pop up. And that's where you're going to find like your larger groups of fish that are staging, that are getting ready to spawn. Classic bites would be like the chatterbait bite. Even before that, you get the rattle trap bite on like the Potomac, Chesapeake. Yeah. That's sort of a well-known thing. And just ripping that through the grass, similar to, you know, Gunnersville, I guess you could say. So.
Yeah, so how was Gunnersville? Like you're talking TVA, so you're talking enormous river systems where you have tons of creeks and sort of fishes similar to a lake at times. How was Gunnersville for you?
I was only there for 2 days. It was right before it got miserably cold, so I got out of there. Like I think the smart people should have done.
Yeah, for real.
It wasn't great for me. I think the problem there was that there was too much grass and there was just eel grass all over the place.
Yeah.
The fish that I caught were, like you said, in that mixture of grass wherever I could find the milfoil mixed in.
Yeah.
And I just didn't have enough time to sort of look around and find, better areas.
Can you talk about the MPFL season at all? Because I know like that's coming up. You have events coming up.
Yeah, absolutely.
What do you, I don't want to ask any questions that get you in trouble. Like, what event are you looking most forward to, and how much are you paying attention to what's going on across the vast world right now? For events
I'm
coming
trying
up.
to watch some MLF stuff because obviously they're at Fall and we're there in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
As of right now, I mean, that's the one I'm most excited for because, gosh, it's like an opportunity I've waited a while for.
Yeah.
And I've been thinking about it for the past year. So I'm excited to get that one rolling. The only other place where I really have experience would be Pickwick. I've been there about 3 times, and then I went to the Harris chain. So they're all pretty new to me. Wright Patman, I'm not really sure what to expect, but Texas sounds fun.
Yeah.
Winnebago, at first, I heard really good things, and maybe you have a clue without disclosing any information. But I heard it's tougher than I would have anticipated. So I'm hearing like 15 pounds is going to be good there.
That's crazy. Yeah, I have no knowledge on Winnebago, believe it or not. But it's one of those places like I get all the time in my comment section, hey, you need to fish here, or hey, you know. And so it's really interesting to see some of the lakes you guys are going to because it's not necessarily always your standard fisheries.
Yeah, I'm excited for Grand Lake in the fall too. I like the fall tournaments. I like the summer tournaments. I am definitely a better summer fall angler than I am spring angler. It seems like the tougher it gets, the better my skill set sort of suits that. So, and I think that goes back to, that's the time of year you can like get up in a creek, you can fish shallow, you can sort of scrap together a limit. So that always suits the style.
Would you say you're more of a junk fisherman, like being from New Jersey? Like
absolutely. You don't have a choice. I mean, you have to have 10 rods on deck and you have to throw whatever, there's not really a sustainable pattern on a lot of the lakes that I grew up fishing. It's more, like I said, spot specific or anywhere you can get a bite. So, maybe it's run to the dam and catch 2 and then run to the creek and catch another one and then, run to a flat and catch another one. So,
and like that's one of the hardest things when I was trying to think of questions to talk about tonight is like, how do you really begin to talk about river fishing unless you can actually go out and experience it, right? Like see the current flowing and like talk about the spots, because to me, like that's what makes guys so good is their ability to be junk fishermen on river systems and just, run here and catch one off, this rock flipping, then go catch one on a crankbait around bridge pilings. And I think that's what makes guys so dangerous on river system is knowing to trust their gut, man. Like,
I think a lot of times when I fish a river system, and other people might be different, but like I'm looking for 1 fish or 2 fish when I run somewhere, and I am targeting not necessarily a specific fish, but a specific fish that's there, and I want to catch that fish, and then I'm going to leave.
Yeah, and it's also a lot of, I don't want to say it's necessarily power fishing, but for the most part, like it is a more run and gun style than if you're fishing a lake looking for, let's say, smallmouth, right? Like grouped up smallmouth. You're not normally going to sit on a spot on a river and catch 20 or 30 fish.
Right.
It might happen in very bizarre situations. I mean, especially in really cold winter style months or when fish are pushing bait. But like, I think that's one of the coolest things about rivers. And
a lot of it's also the repetition and cycling through spots. And it's very timing oriented. So I think the fish move a little more, and I think that they replenish a little quicker. So it's not unusual at all to go fish a spot 3 or 4 times during a day. Sometimes not catch a fish off it until it's that 3rd or 4th time. And you might think, oh, well, this guy's crazy. Why would he go back to this spot for a 4th time after he didn't catch any fish on it for the first 3? But it might just be the right timing, and that fish moved up or moved down, depending upon which way the tide's moving. So,
and conditions just maybe got right? Like, and so you said you're fishing MPFL, but you're also fishing some of the opens, right?
Yeah, I'm going to fish the Centrals. That schedule just sort of fit best with my schedule. I also kind of like the venues better. So,
where are they going this year?
They're going to Lewis Smith, where I actually just spent a day at during my trip. Interesting place for sure. Sounds like
is that spotted or spotted bass?
It's mostly spotted bass. I think there's a few largemouth in there. It's a deep lake. It's kind of like ravine, like very almost bluff banks, stuff like that. And then they're going to Pickwick, and then they're going to Grand. So
you're fishing Pickwick twice, or you're fishing it once?
I am fishing it twice. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And then kind of talk about like what you're most excited about, not necessarily tournament venue wise, but most excited about MPFL, right? Like this is sort of a breakthrough opportunity, and I know it's huge for you, but like,
yeah.
Talk a little bit about that.
I think from a fan perspective, like the entertainment quality that they're going to bring, the commentators with Luke Duncan, David Dudley, and Fat Cat. If you don't know those three guys now, like, you probably should, because they're awesome. So I think they're going to bring the comedy element, and I think you're going to see more of that. And I've already seen them sort of like infuse it like into the culture. So excited for that. And I think it's a good level playing field for someone like myself, who is like a true professional rookie, because I'm competing against what are mostly other rookies. So I'd be a lot more nervous if I was jumping into like the elite field or something like that. But knowing that it's a lot of other guys that are sort of in my shoes as far as trying to make that jump. So.
And like, what do you think about your? Sorry, I was reading one of the questions that were coming in. What do you think about? This is a stepping stone. What are some of your goals going forward? Obviously, I know this is just part of that journey.
You could say it's a stepping stone, but I almost look at it like it might be like an end goal game, or like just a total opportunity in itself. I think maybe the Elite Series is where I want to be. But if I qualified for the Elites next year, I've already thought about this scenario in my head. I'm doing both. Like, I'm not going to just desert the MPFL to fish the Elites, because I need to get as much experience as I can possible.
Dude, for sure. And I didn't mean to make it sound like I was taking anything away from you.
No, like, not at all. I think other people sort of, I don't know. I think some people put their nose up at it, but they don't realize what they're going to do.
Dude, this is a huge commitment and like a huge opportunity to be a professional fisherman. Like a legitimate professional fisherman.
I look at other people, and gosh, I hate to throw shade, but other people who had this opportunity to become a professional, that are sort of actively pursuing the idea of being a professional.
Right.
Like, what you're turning down the opportunity to be a professional. So you clearly don't really want to be a professional. You just want to pretend like you want to be a professional.
And it really, like, dude, you said it the best, where like this is an insane opportunity to really build skills against some guys that are very, very accomplished that are in this field.
Yeah.
You have guys with wins on other circuits in this field, but also a lot of true rookies where you have this ability to go and fish against these dudes, see where you stack up, and then see the things you need to learn, like self-exploration here.
Yeah, it's a totally blank slate, and a lot of people don't know who these guys are. So, there's 10 or 20 guys who are going to establish themselves as, I don't want to say household names, but, quality anglers, because if you're in the top 10, it doesn't matter what circuit you're fishing, you're still in the top 10. So. Yeah,
exactly, man. I'm super excited for you. I know there's some questions coming in. So you mentioned you're most excited about Eufaula. Talk a little bit about what you're seeing, like without giving up too much. What are you hoping the fish are doing when you get there? Because it looks like there's some other stuff going on in MLF right now.
Yeah. So I actually was there. I made 2 separate trips about 10 days apart, one for about 3 or 4 days, and then I went back for another 2 days. My first trip, the water was like 50 degrees, and then when I was back there the second time, it was closer to 53. From what I saw on MLF, it's still around 53. And from my research, it sort of bottoms out at like 50, high 40s in the wintertime anyway. So I feel like it's been pretty stagnant. I would have hoped things had progressed a little further, but it looks like a lot of the country got cold weather the past few weeks. So it seems like they're pretty much right where I left them 2 weeks ago. I'm hoping that they push to the bank, but it's not going to be the entire wave of fish. They're still going to be scattered, so.
And is there like a tournament, like pre-tournament practice off limits period? Like, is it only 3 days, or what does that look like?
There is. So it's 20 days off limits prior to official practice. So 20 days.
And then is it a 3-day practice, and then you have 3 days of event, or 4-day tournament, or what is that?
It's 3 days of practice, and then we have an off day, and then we have a 3-day tournament with no cuts, which is interesting. But I'm excited for it because I feel like I'd like to be a more consistent angler, and I just think over 3 days it just lets the cream of the crop rise to the top, and
And you get to learn the fish, man. Like, just think what you can
you
learn
do.
over those 3 days of practice, but you're not fit. Like, anyone that says they're smoking fish in practice is probably not practicing entirely correct, right? Like,
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
so think about what you can make happen in 3 days.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
But I'm excited for you, man. Well, I appreciate you hopping on. Like I mentioned, this is going to be going up in podcast versions. Do you guys have any questions for Luke before we hop off here? I know this is a little bit of a shorter one, but I don't want to keep you too late, and I have to get a couple other things done tonight. So
okay.
Hit us up with some questions.
I'm good for as long as you are, Ben. So
awesome, man. I appreciate it. But we're gonna wait for some to come in, and then kind of talk a little bit, man, about like your journey. How'd you get to where you're at? Because you're what? You said 32.
Yeah.
You've been trying to do the pro thing since before I met you. So
yeah.
What did that look
like? 20. So I fished the Opens for a couple of years. Realized that I didn't really have the financial backing to do it, even if I had made it. So at that point, like I went back to college, I got my degree, sort of put fishing on the back burner, but was still fishing every tournament that I could. Fished a couple Opens again after I graduated college when I was like 24. Never really had like the big break or the opportunity that I needed. I think I still had that 19-foot champion at the time.
Yeah.
And I realized that probably just wasn't enough boat for me. So I actually sold the glass rig, and I went without a glass rig for a year in 2016. And
What'd you fish with?
I had an aluminum boat because we do a lot of electric only tournaments in Jersey. And I think I won like 9 tournaments that year and cashed like 20 checks fishing local stuff. And it was like great. And it sort of just like reaffirmed like, all right, I have what it takes. I just need to sort of reapply myself. So at that point I got another glass boat, started fishing some bigger stuff again. But sort of just, I had trouble figuring out exactly how it would work and how I'd break through, because then it takes you so much money just to even get there. Like you need 10 grand to blow through a year fishing the Opens, and then you need the 30 or 40K to put down to actually fish.
Yeah, dude, like that's amazing. Talk to me about that, man, because I looked at fishing the Opens. Like I obviously got away from the tournament stuff. I looked at fishing them for 1 year, and I'm like, it might be 10 grand just for like entry fees and to get there. That's not including anything else that goes into it.
Right. And you can come in like 40th place and have a good tournament, right? And you get like a $2,000 check and you like lost 2 grand on your trip. It's not like you're turning any profit. So it might sound crazy at first, but I think it's way cheaper to do what I'm doing than to try and actually like qualify, because I don't have to spend that $10,000 just to qualify,
Right, exactly. And dude, the other thing too is you kind of did it like prove yourself on the local level. You always hear how guys talk about how to go pro, right? Like they start by saying prove yourself on a local level, then start to prove yourself on a regional level, and then move yourself up to the national level. And like you are a testament to that, man. Like you grinded it and grinded it and grinded it until you feel comfortable. But have you ever had like a breakthrough moment where you're like, I can do this, like I can compete?
No, I feel like when I won Iaconelli's Pro-Am tournament in 2019, that was one of those moments. And also, I guess when I made the Bass Nation Championship in 2018, and they take the top 3 to go to the Classic in that event, and I think I was like 18th, which isn't that close, but it's not that far away either. And I was like, oh, wow, I really just needed to catch 3 more fish, and I would have made the Classic.
Where was that at?
That was at Pickwick. And I didn't have a limit either day, but I was on the right fish, and that's how it goes sometimes. But
that's crazy. Hold on one second. I'm going to plug your Instagram over here in the comments. What other ways can people follow you or like support you this year?
Just Instagram and Facebook. I think I'm going to work on a YouTube channel. I'm trying to just keep it real and authentic, Ben. There's too many phonies in this business. And I think the people will really relate to someone who's just like keeping it real and not trying to sell them on anything. So I think anyone who sees me and sees like just my daily actions, like knows that I'm working for it, and I'm trying to do it the right way. So
well, and that's one of the things, man. Like one of the coolest parts of following what you're doing just on Instagram right now is like you're sharing behind the scenes. It's not like always, oh man, check out this big fish I caught. Like here's some motivational quote, right? Like no, you show yourself living in that truck, and you show the shit shower that you had to use.
I think people need to see that, because like I said, there's too many like misconceptions going around, and just because you got a wrap on your truck or whatever, people think you're a big deal, and that's not always the case. So
for sure.
I'm going into my pro event without a wrap on my boat and truck. So hopefully someone will see that as an opportunity and want to throw some real money at
that was one of the questions that just came in. They said, would you ever let sponsors start to pay your entry fees? And what does that look like for you? Like, do they start to control the derbies you fish? But like, obviously,
difficult to find anything like that right now, like with the economic environment. For me, like this past year, trying to pursue things. Now, I think moving forward, I think it'll be a little more stable as we sort of reach the end of this pandemic.
Right.
I also feel like my marketing leverage will be higher a month from now after our first event, or even 6 months from now after the season, than it will be right now. But I know a lot of guys who have a wrap and you'd assume they're getting paid and they're not really getting paid. And I'm not willing to be one of those guys. So,
dude, 100%.
Yeah.
I always said if I get a new boat, like a new boat, I'll probably wrap it just for the sake of protecting it and just have it be black.
That's what I'm dealing with right now, because I've never had a new boat or like a new car in my entire life, and now I got this beautiful 2021 Bass Cat, and the way I like to fish and a new boat don't mesh. So
yeah, dude, kind of talk about that style too, right? Like we talk shallow river, but like you're junk fisherman and like shallow water dude. So talk about that.
Yeah. I'm always the curious type. I mean, I always try and get to where other people haven't. My buddy who I was talking to earlier, he referenced a story. Gosh, it was the same red boat we fished out of, but there was a spot on the Delaware River, which I had never accessed. I had never heard anyone accessing it. And I tried to swim my boat under this bridge. And turns out it was all rocks underneath it. So my boat doesn't even get under the bridge. And now I'm stuck under the bridge on rocks, right? And I can't get through.
Oh my God, dude.
And then the tide changes, right? So now the tide's coming up, but my boat's stuck under a bridge, but it can only raise so much before it hits the top of the bridge and crushes my boat, you know? So I had to tie like all these ropes to trees and create like an intricate like pulley system and like wait for the tide to get at just the right point where my boat like wasn't getting crushed by the rocks or the bridge to pull it out. It was
needless to say, you didn't make it under that bridge, right?
No, I did not make it under that bridge, and I made it home around midnight that night. So
that's insane, dude. But man, I'm excited for you, dude. I really appreciate everything. I'm obviously going to be following you. I guess actually one more question popped through. Explain the MPFL format a little bit. So you talked about there being no cuts, 3-day event, but like, what is sort of the overall format? You guys have an Angler of the Year system, obviously.
Yeah.
But how many tournaments is it? And then do you guys go into a championship, or what does that look like?
It's 6 tournaments, and then there's a 7th championship, and they're taking the top 25 for the championship. So that's a smaller field. I was originally thinking like maybe that's not great because it's difficult to qualify for. But then if you think about if you do qualify for it, you know, it's a lot more exposure, and the spotlight is more on you per se. You know, you're going to get a lot more attention because there's only 25 guys, not 50 or 60 guys like in some of these other championship events. Typical 5-fish format, 12 inches unless otherwise. It looks like you follow might be tough, so I'll be taking some of those 12 inchers.
And then how many guys are in?
They're going to have
like how many total?
5 cameras every day, I believe, in the boats, and then they're going to have 2 roaming cameras. So
that is sweet, though.
12, and I'm not sure, but I think they might be trying to do like a selectability feature with the live, where you don't have to just watch the entire feed; you can watch a specific angler. So
that would be awesome.
You can watch someone just totally uninterrupted.
That'd be awesome, man. I'm excited. It's like, for so long, it's been 2 circuits, right? And obviously you have the 3rd sort of ish.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like, you have someone totally new coming in with all these new ideas run by fishermen, like real fishermen.
Yeah.
And so I'm excited.
It's very no frills, and they seem to be very just straightforward with the anglers, you know, like there's to be nothing behind the scenes that you would be worried about, and every decision needs to be made is sort of just brought to the angler's attention, and we vote on it, and that's how it's handled. So
how many total anglers are there?
About 110.
Oh, so it's not a huge field either, which is kind of, I mean, it's good.
Yeah, I think it's good. I think it's better like for the fisheries, you know.
Yeah.
I just did the 220 boat tournament on the Harris chain, and it's a mess. So
yeah, both from like fishing pressure, but also like the weigh in and just the
even just in the
overall.
yeah, like just trying to get your boat in the water. So
Yeah. Well, that's awesome, man. I appreciate you hopping on. I'm sure everyone else does. If you guys are listening on podcast version, we also did this live. Come over, check out the YouTube channel. Be sure to support Luke. You guys can follow him on Instagram. It's just at Luke.Shrader, Shrader. Do not spell it wrong. Do not spell it wrong. I was reading it straight off the screen this time. But, dude, do you have anyone you want to shout out or plug before we hop off here?
I guess Bass Cat Boats, Mercury Marine, Power Pole, and everyone over at Pradco, which is War Eagle, Bandit, Bomber, all my modest sponsors, but they've been good to me. So
that's awesome, man. I'm super stoked to follow you, and I know you're going to have an awesome year. So
awesome.
Thanks everyone that watched. You guys can check it out on podcasts. But until next time, take care, tight lines. God bless. Pursue your passion.
All right. See you, Ben.
See you, dude. Thanks for helping.